Hey folks, welcome back to Integrative Psychonautics, and today's video is one I've been meaning to make for quite a while here, and this is an incredibly important discussion that you're really going to watch and want to take in. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the drama triangle, which some of you may be familiar with, some of you may not. This may be new to you, but I want to explain it, and I want to explain why it's so important to understand when it comes to your success with healing, your success with personal growth, your success in whatever coaching or therapy or psychedelic therapy or any type of growth process that you're involved in, especially if you're working with someone else to help facilitate that process with you. And quite frankly, this is something you're going to want to know just as a core life understanding, a core life skill that is going to make all of your relationships and, quite frankly, your life overall a much better experience. So this is a crucial conversation I'm going to create with you here today. Please join me. This is something all of you really should know. So let's talk about it. Okay, a couple quick comments here that I want to make off the bat before we go ahead and dive into understanding the drama triangle and unpacking the implications. So I want to acknowledge up front here that I'm making this video for a lot of different reasons. So I'm making this video to empower you to get the most out of coaching, therapy, any sort of process where you're working with someone else to grow or optimize yourself, right? This is important to know in any of those contexts, especially if you're someone who has, issues you're trying to work on and heal and resolve. So for anyone in therapy, this is must-know information. I'm also making this for potential clients of mine. So if you're looking at becoming a client of mine, this is something I will send to you and require that you watch so that you understand this dynamic. It's incredibly important to me personally. It's also something I'm making because I've seen a lot of mistreatment of people through misunderstanding the drama triangle or being stuck in the drama triangle. And so there's a certain element here of me wanting to educate and even hold people a little bit accountable, right? So because of that, there may be a little bit of heaviness in my delivery here. There may be a little bit of, it could feel slightly blamey, although I'm really not pointing the finger at anyone in particular here. And I don't mean to put you on the spot or call you out. My aim here really is to walk a nice center line of educating and empowering and being compassionate about these dynamics, but also naming the way that they play out in coaching relationships or therapy relationships or between friends or family members, lovers, et cetera, et cetera. The drama triangle really impacts every relationship we have. It impacts our relationship to, again, anyone we're working with. It impacts our relationships in our family and our friends, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship to things, right? So our relationship to food or to alcohol or substances or entertainment or the internet. The drama triangle plays out all over the place in all of our relationships. And that's exactly why I think this is such must-know information. So I want to just kind of acknowledge all of that I'm going to be laying what is a little bit of a heavy piece of information on you here, but I'm going to do my best to be, clear, compassionate, gentle about my delivery here. There is somewhat of an element here of calling out a little bit or pointing at the shadow that some people may not want to see if you're watching this, but I do think it's important information. And I'm really not coming from judgment or shame or blame, but more from a place of wanting to empower you to know perhaps where you're stuck and how to get unstuck so that you can really make real progress with your healing and with your growth. So enough for now on all the caveats and all the, all the kind of commentary here. Let's go ahead and start unpacking what the drama triangle is for anyone who's not familiar. And then we'll start to unpack all the implications because there's a lot here. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into just first understanding the drama triangle and how this all works. And then we'll kind of unpack the implications because as simple as this model is, there's a lot here. So what we're looking at is the drama triangle. There are different names for it, and there are different names for some of the roles here. But the first thing you see, of course, is that we have a triangle here between three different roles that people often play. And as you might guess from the name, the implication here is that these roles entangle each other in drama. So these three roles reinforce dramatic scenarios and experiences and situations and amplify drama, right? So, quite simply, we have the victim role, we have the rescuer role, and we have the persecutor role. And the basic thing to understand about this is that when we are in the drama triangle, we will generally be in one of these roles. And from the vantage point of the role we're in, we will only see the other two types of roles, right? So we will start to sort other people around us. We'll be looking at them through this lens of, are they one of the other two roles? So if I am a rescuer, if I'm a people pleaser who looks to save others and looks to make other people happy and rescue them from their unhappiness or from bad situations, I'm going to see other people through a lens that shows me either persecutors. So I'm going to see people as persecutors, or I'm going to see people as victims, right? And especially as a rescuer, I'm going to be looking for victims a lot of the time, or I'm going to be looking for persecutors to, attack, and defend the victim from, right? Likewise, if I'm a persecutor, right? If someone's in persecutor mode and they're looking to take advantage of others, they're going to be looking out, and all they're going to see is either victims or people who are trying to rescue the victims, right? So I'm going to be looking for people I can take advantage of. I'm going to be looking for people that are trying to stop me, right? And if I'm in victim mode, if I'm in the role of the victim, then I'm only going to see rescuers or persecutors. I'm going to see the people that hurt me. I'm going to see the people that are here to save me, right? And so this is the first thing I want you to get, is that when we're in the drama triangle, again, we only see these other two roles, and all three of these roles reinforce the other, right? So if I'm in victim mode, I can only see rescuers, right? So I'm looking for people to rescue me, and I can only see persecutors. And this becomes a real problem when it comes to working with a coach, or working with a therapist, or working with you go to a medicine retreat center and you're working with a shaman, right? We will start to sort people through these lenses, and this can really get in the way of perhaps a more dynamic, flexible, nuanced way of understanding other people and relating to other people, right? So these are roles that can really get in the way of seeing the world around us very clearly. So this is the first thing I want you to get. The second thing I want you to get is that when you're in the drama triangle, what is going to get created is drama, right? And drama is not conducive to healing or to personal growth or to clearly being seen or clearly seeing others, right? That when we're in drama, we're just going to be rehashing and amplifying and reiterating more and more drama, right? And so this is something to really be mindful of, because it can really get in the way of our ability to kind of unplug and unentangle from whatever it is that we need to heal, right? So the thing you really want to understand about the drama triangle, besides just these three roles and that they tend to reinforce each other and recreate each other and only see each other, right? The other thing I want you to really get here is that the real solution to healing, if you really want to heal, you really want to change or grow or transform, you have to get outside of the drama triangle altogether. You can't be inside the drama triangle, perpetuating more and more drama, and really effectively heal or change or transform. So we've got to get ourselves out of the drama triangle first. And this means stepping outside of these roles, right? Unhooking from either the blame that we're seeing others in these roles and therefore kind of implicitly putting ourselves in one of these roles, or unhooking from identifying with one of these roles and confusing the role with the whole experience or the whole truth of the situation or the whole possibility of what's available to us, right? So if I'm in one of these roles, I lose sense of what else is available to me. Especially, we'll be talking a lot about the victim here because, quite frankly, this is the role most people tend to want to run to. And also, if we're talking coaching or therapy or psychedelic therapy, these kinds of situations, lot of the people coming for that kind of work, they're in a victim role. They're looking at it through the lens of victim consciousness. So we'll be looking a lot at the victim here, but I want you to just get these two things, what this is, how they reinforce each other, and how your way forward to healing is to get unplugged from the drama triangle. As long as you're kind of reinforcing the drama triangle and stuck inside of it, you're just going to continue to have painful experiences, disappointing experiences, really complicated and meshed, uncomfortable, frustrating, all of that. It's going to be dramatic. So let's unpack some of the implications here. I'll talk a bit about why I'm talking about this and start to clarify how I keep seeing this play out for people. And hopefully this will be helpful for you. Okay, so now that you've seen the drama triangle and you have a sense of what I'm talking about here, that there's this triangle that tends to happen in relationships between these three roles of victim, persecutor, and savior, let's unpack a bit about some of the implications here, some of the things I think you really must know. And I'm going to start by repeating something I said in the last section there, which is that it's really important to understand that these are not truths about people. These are roles that people play. It's really important to understand that a person is not their role. A role is a way that we show up, a way that we kind of consciously or unconsciously make an agreement to engage with others, that we don't have to play. You don't always have to be your role. And for a lot of us, I think we get confused about roles and identity in our society, where we tend to see ourselves through the role. For example, people ask you the moment they meet you to try to get a sense of who you are, what do you do for a living, right? They're asking you, what is your role in society? And they're conflating that with your identity, right? Another example, of course, is that we tend to slot others around us into roles and try to categorize people's roles in our lives so that we have a more comfortable handle on who's who and what's what, again, confusing who they actually are and their identity with the roles that they're playing. Now, I would say in general, this is kind of, roles are a limited, narrow definition of a person. And I think we want to really understand that and not confuse roles for the wholeness of the person we're dealing with or the reality of the situation. So the first thing I want you to really wrap your head around here is, if you're on the drama triangle and you're seeing these roles and you're seeing yourself in a role, please separate the identity of all people involved from the roles being played, and understand that you do not have to play inside of these roles. That a lot of times playing inside a role like this can be toxic, right? And so this would be the first thing I really want you to get is, these are roles. This is not reality. This is not the only way a person is, even if that's how they appear to you. The next thing I want to make just really explicitly clear here is that the important thing to do, the important thing to understand here is to get out of the drama triangle altogether, to just unplug from this paradigm, because you're just going to, make more of a mess, quite frankly, the longer you spend inside the drama triangle. A lot of times when I see people and their relationships are messy, this is what's at the heart of it, is some identification with one of these roles and sorting other people into other roles, and there being a bit of inflexibility or a sense of controllingness or neediness around this. And it just ends up making a mess of things, right? So I would encourage you to get outside of the drama triangle, let go of these roles, because it gives you so much more flexibility to discover, to heal, to make nuanced understandings of things, and to change and grow, because you're not stuck in trying to force these roles to continue to exist. So get out of the drama triangle is one of the biggest pieces of information I can say here if you're in the drama triangle. I know I said that already, but it's worth repeating. So get out of the drama triangle if this is where you find yourself. And there's some other implications with this that come along with this, right? So another one would be that if you're going to get out of the drama triangle, this means that you have to take responsibility for whatever role you've kind of consciously or unconsciously put yourself in or put someone else in. Take ownership that you're doing that. Be accountable to that and the impact that's having on perpetuating drama, right? And be really clear about stepping outside of that and unplugging from that and unsubscribing from this dramatic cycle that gets perpetuated, and really be self-honest, be responsible for that. And in conjunction with that, another really key important thing to understand here is that this ultimately means if you're putting yourself in the victim role in particular, that, a lot of what we see is victims looking for saviors, right? And what this means is that you've got to pivot to taking responsibility for saving yourself, right? Or at least to take responsibility for letting others off the hook from saving you, to unplug from just this is the one way this has to go so that I can heal, is I need to find someone who will come into my life and save me, and instead consider the other options. I could save myself. Someone else could be a constructive part of my path, but they don't have to be my savior, etc., etc., right? This is one of the major dynamics I'll be talking about here in this video because it's most relevant to, my practice as a coach, probably your needs in terms of looking for either a therapist or coach or something like that. This dynamic between the victim and the savior, this is really where this plays out a lot in the kind of mental health or the personal growth spaces. So I'll be talking a lot about that particular part of the triangle in general, but consider you're going to have to take responsibility for yourself and your own experience and your own way of processing the world in order to really have the control over your nervous system to be able to heal and change and grow, right? That doesn't mean you can't have support along the way. You can't have expert guidance or expert help or, people around you to help you feel safe enough to do that. But ultimately, we have to take responsibility for the role we've put ourselves in and the role we're putting other people in, because there's a lot of unfairness that can come out of being put in these roles when you don't want to be put in these roles by others, right? So we'll be talking about that too. So let's unpack this a bit more. There's more implications here. Okay, so I wanted to cover a couple more major implications here that are really at the heart of this message that I really want you to try to understand and take in. And then we'll unpack some of the kind of more nuanced implications here. So one of the major things I want you to really get is that when you are in one of these roles, let's say you're in the victim role, and you're looking for either a savior or you're thinking of others in terms of their persecutors to you, when you're in this role, you're going to feel stuck, right? Because in order for this to continue, this role to continue, you're going to, again, be sorting others in these other ways. And that's going to limit, your behaviors, your set of possible behaviors, because if you do certain things, you'll no longer be in the victim role, right? Same thing, if you're looking for saviors, right, you're going to limit the way you see other people and how they can show up in your life. And therefore, that's going to keep them stuck. So you can really create a lot of stuckness for yourself and for others and for your relationships and for what's possible if you're rigidly clinging to these roles. And so a lot of times when we're stuck, when it comes to our growth and our personal development, this is a big piece of it, is that we are basically trying to, rigidly hold on to one of these roles, typically the victim role. And that can really, really, really keep us from growth, because if I have to acknowledge that I'm not just a victim, then, that can really kind of freak me out and leave me uncertain about how to progress or what to do with certain information or how to understand things. And that can be scary. So a lot of times we stay stuck because these roles provide a sense of orientation or comfort or grounding or a certain perception. And so that rigidity can really work against us. Another major implication, if you, and this is something I see a lot, right? If you're working with a coach or a therapist, and you're putting them in the savior role, right? Please be my savior. Please come fix me. I need you to come sort me out, right? If that's where you're coming from, you're putting a ton of pressure on that therapist or coach or whoever to show up in a very particular way and to deliver a very particular result that really limits their ability to be as flexible and effective as possible, right? So I want you to understand that when you do this to a coach or when you do this to a therapist, and sure, I'm talking about myself here because I've been on the receiving end of this dynamic a lot, but not just me. I'm also talking about peers I know, other coaches, other therapists. I'm always talking with peers. And this is such a common phenomenon for people who are kind of in the service space, right? That we get projected upon as saviors and we're expected to do all the heavy lifting for the person to help to fix them and solve all their problems and be responsible for their healing when they are passive because they're in a victim role and not responsible for their own healing. And it's an incredibly limiting, narrow, stressful, pressure filled, and unfair dynamic when people start to box us in a corner like that. So I want you to know that if you're doing that to your coach or your therapist or whoever you're working with, that you're doing them a major disservice, which does your relationship a major disservice, which does you a major disservice, because then they can only show up in a certain way, right? So this really limits the range and the capacity and really the ability to get the most out of the experience, right? So that's huge. And another thing I really want you to get, and this is like at the heart of the message here, and this can sound a little blamey. I don't want to be heavy handed about this. Um, if you see yourself in a victim role, I want you to understand that just because you feel like you're a victim, that doesn't mean that you're not capable of unconsciously being a persecutor, right? So a lot of times when people perceive themselves as victims, their blind spot becomes the ways in which they're acting that can be boundary breaking, unfair, full of projection, full of judgment and shame and guilt. Victims can do a lot of harmful stuff under the guise of being a victim and not recognize that they're actually doing harmful stuff because their self-concept is victimhood, right? And so this plays out massively when you're, working with folks or you're looking for someone to be a savior for you. And I really want you to understand that even though you see yourself as a victim, if you do, that doesn't absolve you from being a considerate person or from being being attuned to those around you and being aware of their needs or what's right, or being aware of your communication and how it impacts them, right? Just because you perceive yourself as a victim doesn't give you permission to break other people's boundaries or not be aware of their boundaries or be overly controlling or manipulative or kind of lash out or be toxic or be really leaky with your emotions and inappropriate in what you say, or all these things, right? um, it's really still the onus is on you to operate with good boundaries, be considerate, be kind, be as good of a person as you can possibly be, right? This is super important for you to understand. And again, I know a lot of coaches, myself included, who have been on the receiving end of a lot of weird, messy projection and uncomfortable control dynamics and reactivity and all kinds of stuff because people perceive themselves as victims and then they don't track the ways in which they're behaving that are actually, quite frankly, more on the persecutor side of things, right? So just because you're a victim does not absolve your any uncouth behavior, shall we say, right? And on that point, I want to say that I really get it. Like a lot of times when we feel like a victim, especially if it's really bad and it's been that way for a long time, it's kind of like we can feel like we're drowning. And it can kind of feel like the person coming to us to help us is our lifeguard. And it's very much that dynamic of the lifeguard. The first thing they have to do when they get close to a drowning person is make sure that the drowning person doesn't try to pull them under. And this is a lot of times what this feels like and looks like is, when you're in a victim mode, you may be trying to pull that person under, right? Unconsciously, or knock them down a peg, or lash out, or do all kinds of strange, inappropriate things that are, quite frankly, if we want to unpack it further, probably expressions of the wounding you've been through and the dynamics you've been through, kind of a re-perpetuation of that with someone else who's trying to help you. And so I want you to really internalize this, that is not appropriate. is not okay. You can't be doing this to your therapists or your coaches. You can't be projecting that they're saviors and being really inappropriate with them. You're still responsible for your behavior, uh, period. It's super important that you get that. Right. And, just to be really clear, since I will be sending this video out to potential clients of mine, if you're thinking of working with me, I won't accept that behavior. And if you try to put me in the drama triangle, I will get outside of it, invite you outside of it with me. I'm not going to accept these kinds of savior victim roles or savior persecutor roles. And I don't appreciate being projected on in this way. And so, personal boundary for me as a coach, right? But also, again, I know so many coaches who want to say this to their clients, but they also want to present a really polite, warm, friendly public persona and don't know how to say this, right? Not every coach or therapist has kind of the guts and the cojones to put everything on the line and be frank with you. So I'm saying this not only on the behalf of myself and for any future people I work with. I'm saying this on the behalf of a lot of other, mental health workers and coaches and hypnotherapists or psychedelic guides or sitters or whoever else that may not have the courage or the comfort to be this transparent. So please understand, if you do this, this is your responsibility to manage these dynamics, to clean this up, to be self-aware enough, even while you are feeling desperate and in need of support. You've got to navigate that from a graceful place. Thankfully, last thing I'll say about that is, in my experience, most of my clients have been awesome about this. I have a lot of clients who have gone through a lot and understandably feel out of sorts in all kinds of ways. And most of my clients have been absolutely fantastic about being responsible for themselves and, managing their own nervous systems and being self-aware of their boundaries or any unhealthy behavior they may be running. And it's been a joy and a pleasure. So for any one of you out there who's already self-aware in this way and doing your best, shout out to you. It's really noticed and appreciated. Okay, enough with this section. Let's move on to some of the other implications here. There's a lot of other stuff. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other implications. Some of these get a little more subtle. Some of them I've already said. I'm just kind of looking at my notes here and wanted to just kind of make sure I get these points across to you. So the first thing I wanted to kind of add, I know I've said this already before, but just to make it explicit, if you're looking for someone to save you, if you find yourself in the victim role and you're looking for someone to save you, of savior, you are reinforcing your own victim status, right? So think about that for a moment. Like, the more you're looking for a savior or looking at the persecutor, so this is the other side of the coin, and I've done this myself in my own life, the more you ruminate on the person who perhaps wronged you or the situation that wronged you, the more you're strengthening your own identity around being a victim. And think about how that keeps you stuck again and inflexible from being able to adapt, grow, change. And think about, as perhaps comforting or familiar as it might be to identify as a victim, how also painful and uncomfortable it is to see ourselves that way, right? So one of the things I want you to really get is that, the more you're sorting things in this way, the more it keeps the whole thing going and keeps you in this place of pain and dissatisfaction with your own self-concept. So, if you can let go of the victim role and you can let go of looking for a savior per se, this helps you to get unhooked from that. And this starts to soften the pain of identifying as a victim. Okay, another point I want to make here. When you step into the victim role, you're limiting your own power, right? By definition, a victim is someone who's disempowered in a situation, right? And so one of the ways, there's actually an inverse to the drama triangle, which I think I did another video. I can talk about it again, called the empowerment triangle. And the victim role really becomes the person who is aware of their own capabilities and power. And that's how you undo the victim role, is becoming empowered, essentially recognizing the power you have, the moves you can make, the changes you can make, the ways you can transform a situation, being curious about that, open-minded about that, right? So recognize that if you're stepping into the victim and you're staying there, you're really limiting your capacity to empower yourself. And because of that, if you're not self-empowering, you're limiting your capacity to discover your own self-healing capacity, right? Because I mean, in this case, we're talking empowerment in the terms of what are your capabilities? What can you make happen? And self-healing would be a capability, right? So if you're limiting your power, you're limiting your capability, including your capability to self-heal, right? So that's important for you to know. Another point here is that you might unfairly be making people into persecutors who aren't exactly, right? So when we build an identity out of being a victim, it's really easy then to start to get this kind of vigilant sorting of the world for looking for persecutors, looking for people who are toxic, dangerous, bad people. And we can sometimes catch someone in a dynamic and start to project on them that this is how they are and who they are. And we can end up creating that when that's not there, or, kind of framing someone into a corner with that unfairly and unjustly, and really damaging our relationship with them or damaging the possibility of how they could show up in our life. I think the reality and the truth is that a lot of people out in the world sure have a good side but also have a bad side, and have a mix of healthy and unhealthy sides and intentions and behaviors and ways of being. And it's much more nuanced and complex than that they're just good people and bad people, and the bad people are here to hurt us and the good people are here to save us. It's not that simple. A lot of people are very nuanced and complex, and if we frame someone as a persecutor, that person might also be able to be an ally to you in some way, or a partial ally to you in some way, or someone that really doesn't deserve that kind of weight, right? And so this is another thing to understand. If you're putting people in that role, it can be really unfair. It can be really judgy. It can feel really intense and loaded with a lot of kind of, again, vigilance. And so I want to encourage you to not do that to people. It's not helpful. It really limits how people show up and what's possible, right? So consider that this is a very unfair thing to do, right? Here's another one, right? If you find yourself moving into savior mode, that can also be really unfair and keep people stuck, right? There was a time, and speaking for myself here, from my own lived experience, there was a time for me where I was absolutely still in my kind of anxious attachment, had a lot of kind of feelings of anxiety and insecurity and needing to have a place and a role and a relevance in the world. And I, had a lot of relationships with folks where I would try to put myself in a savior role because I didn't know how to really deal with the vulnerability of feeling like a victim, right? So a lot of people who feel like victims will try to swing over to savior mode because that feels more powerful and more safe than being a victim, right? And so that was me for a long time, and I'd swung over into this kind of savior role, and and I would relate to other people through that lens, really selfishly. Really, it was for my own validation, my own sense of having a role, my own sense of purpose. And it's really uncomfortable, right? For other people around you to be sorted into either persecutor or victim role while you're trying to make yourself a savior. It's also very unfair to people to do this. It's unkind, it's unconscious, it's inconsiderate. And so I would encourage you, if you find yourself kind of going into savior mode, to become conscious of this also, because you can be doing a lot of damage to your relationships and to people's sense of their own well-being or their own happiness or how they want to show up in your life, right? It's really weird kind of to put people back into their victim mode over and over and over so that you can feel like you have a point and a purpose, right? Or to put people back into persecutor mode over and over and over so that you can feel like the big bad hero in the situation and protect people. Like, it's a weird thing to do, and I would encourage you, if that's you, to just cut it out, stop it. It's a toxic thing to do. It just makes more drama. Some other examples here. So again, you can use a victim role, and this is a classic thing, and I think we see this a lot in society right now. You can use a victim role to kind of claim exemption from your bad behaviors, right? I can't help it. I'm drowning. Blah, 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 and end up acting like a tyrant, right? This is actually a very dangerous thing that I think, again, we see a lot of socially, where there are people who are deeply identified as victims who use that victim status as a way to cover up their desires for control and dominance and manipulation and really tyrannical, gross behavior, right? So I want you to be self aware of that. If you find yourself prone to seeing yourself as a victim and sorting yourself in this role, you can very easily be a tyrant and not be aware of it. And actually, you wouldn't think of yourself this way, but actually be kind of a bully or be kind of an oppressor yourself. And it's really sucks. I've been around people like this, and it sucks because you can tell they see themselves as a victim, and yet they're doing really heavy, tyrannical, manipulative, controlling things. And the moment you point that out to them, it's not a part of their self-concept. And so they're going to probably not react very well to it. And it's going to be a big conflict and a big drama. Again, perpetuates more of the drama. And so I would encourage you strongly to become self-aware. If you see yourself as a victim, to start to look at, how am I maybe being a bit of a bully, sorry, dogs, or being oppressive, right? Another example here, right? Pedestalization. So, when we are especially in victim mode, and especially if we're looking for, a savior, a lot of times what happens is we will place people on a pedestal. I'm weak, I'm vulnerable, I need help. You are perfect and amazing, and you can fix me. I know you can, right? This kind of a thing. Especially, again, we see this a lot between people who are seeking therapy or coaching or anything like that. And, the therapists and the coaches that they end up hiring, a lot of times there's this pedestalization. There's this, you are so much more evolved than me. You're so much better of a person than me, this kind of thing. You see this a lot in the ayahuasca world with shamans, for example. And then eventually what happens with pedestalization is the person is a human being, and they're going to do something to disappoint you. And a lot of times what happens, and this is kind of falls into the narcissistic abuse category, kind of broadly or vaguely, but it's also a very just codependent thing to do. The person does something that doesn't fit with your concept of them as savior, and then you knock them off the pedestal and totally devalue them, right? Again, this is something that's totally unfair most of the time, really generally very unhealthy to do, not cool, not kind. And so this is another example of why it's really important for you to be self-aware of if you're in the drama triangle and getting yourself out of that, right? So just take someone out of the savior role, even if they're capable of helping you to a great degree. Take them out of that role and see them as a human being, right? Take yourself out of the victim role and see yourself as a human being dealing with whatever it is that you've been dealing with, right? Take someone out of the persecutor role and see them as a human being, and perhaps whatever their trauma or issues are that have kind of driven them to behave the way they're going to behave, right? So add more nuance, humanize the whole experience, take it out of roles, right? Another example here is, if you feel like you're a victim and you're looking for a savior, a lot of times what we don't realize is that we're not looking at if the savior is even really, evolved enough, conscious enough, well-developed enough, self-aware enough. What's their level of consciousness and level of development? And is that even going to be healthy or good for us, right? So an obvious example would be, say, in dating dynamics, relationship dynamics. A lot of times people will find a perfect person. I know you're going to save me from being all alone and heartbreak and all this, and then we get into a relationship with the person, not really considering about how well developed that person is in their ability to really meet us or see us or attune to us or match what we need, right? So then we start projecting all these needs and we think it's going to be perfect. And again, pedestalization, we start expecting them to show up a certain way and then they don't. And then we get disappointed, blah, 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 right? So we want to be aware, is this person, if we're looking, say, at therapy, is this therapist really well developed enough to meet me where I need to be met? Is this therapy modality the whole complete picture of what I need to help me sort myself out, right? What if you need 3 or 4 different types of therapy combined together to really do the work that you need to do, right? So when we're just seeing saviors, we kind of miss all that data and we just see, oh, that's the thing, that's the person, that's how I'm going to get fixed and saved, right? So we want to stop doing that and slow down and see more nuance, because you really can end up just jumping from experience to experience, thing to thing, just discarding stuff along the way, because it's not what's going to save you, right? Because we're not taking responsibility for ourselves, right? Last point I want to make here, since this channel talks a lot about psychedelic therapy, this obviously is a point that goes beyond psychedelic therapy, though, which is that especially this victim savior dynamic, this can play out also not just with people or with, say, coaches or therapists, which is kind of one of my major points here. This can also play out with substances, right? So in the psychedelic therapy world, the obvious example is people being like, oh, the mushrooms will fix me, right? Oh, the MDMA will heal my trauma. I just need to eat MDMA and it'll heal my trauma and I'll be better, right? Oh, the DMT will enlighten me and then I will know all and I will be liberated from my suffering and I will be a whole, complete, cosmically activated human being, right? There's this concept, this implicit thing of using things, substances in this case, as saviors, right? And this is the same thing. We're in the drama triangle. It's just not a person, it's a thing, right? This could also obviously be true outside of the psychedelic context with street drugs, alcohol, the internet, all the vices, right? So food, shopping, porn, over socializing, overusing sex as a way to self-regulate, all of these things, as experiences, as things traveling, blah, 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 right? All of that can also be inside of parts of the drama triangle, right? Also, I would add to that, sometimes the persecutor isn't a person, it's an experience, right? It's a memory, it's a fear, it's an emotion in our body we aren't ready to process yet. We don't know how to process, we're afraid to process. The persecutor can be, whatever, like the cosmic, evil in life, or, the conspiracy entity, or whatever, all that kind of stuff, right? We can look at all of these things as persecutors and misunderstand the, perhaps, again, nuanced complexity of the situation. And, and there again, we're back in the drama triangle here. And so, yeah, I want to just kind of list all these nuances. So there's a lot of ways, hopefully you're starting to get what I mean here. There are a lot of ways that the drama triangle plays out, and a lot of different nuances to this that can really limit our ability to access healing, well-being, growth, transformation, etc. So let me just summarize here and we'll wrap the video. Okay, so the first thing I want to know here is, since I've just been talking to a camera for the last, 40 minutes and kind of rattling off all this information, is, does this make sense to you? Is this clear and coherent and cogent for you? Do you understand kind of what the drama triangle is and how we kind of get entangled in these roles? And do you understand the implications of putting yourself in one of these roles now? I'd love to know. It's really important that this message is clear and good enough that this will be a useful tool for you in your life, right? So please leave a comment down below if you'd like to, about whether or not this really makes sense to you, or if something needs clarifying. Other thing I want to know here is, did I do an okay job of explaining this and unpacking all the different ways that this plays out, and show some compassion and understanding, while also kind of naming some of the ways that this gets kind of run that maybe perhaps you're doing or someone is doing? Did I strike a balance here between being fair and being kind of perhaps a little honest, right? So I'd love to know that as well. And lastly, what has this kind of awakened for you, if anything? What have you seen or understood about yourself, or about relationships in your life, perhaps other people putting you in the drama triangle, and the implications of this for you, right? So again, I want to just kind of like highlight in bold that your progress, your ability to grow, your ability to heal, your ability to really move forward with your process here is really dependent on you getting yourself outside of the drama triangle, right? I want you to understand that really clearly. It's really important to see this and see how this creates kind of toxic dynamics and keeps us stuck, and to just make a clear agreement with ourselves to unplug from that whole set of dynamics and try to step outside of these roles and see it from a different angle, right? It's really, really important. Again, if you're someone considering working with me, I want you to understand that I will invite you out of the drama triangle, and that this is going to get in our way if you try to run this dynamic with me. I'm really not comfortable with it. But not only that, it just hems us in. It just really narrows what we can do together. So I want you to understand that if you're looking, at me as a coach, that this is something I'm mindful of, and I will, hold you accountable to, kindly, compassionately, and I will invite you out of, right? Um, and I think that's about it for this video. Do you have any other, thoughts, questions? I'd love to know. Leave them down in the comment section below, like I just said. And I will see you guys in a future video. Take care.